The issues that we're going to cover in this brief presentation that I've got are essentially what are the mechanisms and rights that need to be reserved for the folks that you send into the field to address environmental issues, in particular those with illicit discharges. There's a lot of different circumstances that may arise to needing an ordinance like this. You're doing dry weather screening, you're doing watershed monitoring, participating with Watershed Watch, citizen complaints, all sorts of things are different areas wherein you may discover that there's been some sort of an impact to the stream. And those are the kinds of scenarios that we're talking about, not necessarily a review of a permit DMR, but more a visual or some sort of an objectionable feature of the stream. And so when you guys get out in the field, when your folks, your inspectors, your investigators, run into locked gates, guard shacks, uncooperative facilities, what are the tools that are in your ordinance that provide your folks the ability to address those issues timely and ensure that corrective action is taken immediately? What we're going to discuss is a brief case study about a particular issue that we had just over the course of last summer and fall. So some WKU students who oddly enough were working on installing a water quality unit, a real-time measurement and monitoring device at Jennings Creek, which is one of our few surface streams. We've just got the three right behind the local school. Said, hey, we've got some odors, we've got some objectionable stuff going on over here. There's definitely something wrong with Jennings Creek. When we will go out, we find out that it's abnormal algal growth. Ultimately, some of our partners helped us to determine that was a chemotroph explosion that was brought on by the anaerobic issues that were going on with the stream, dragging the oxygen down and allowing those chemotrophs to take over. As you typically do, any sort of an issue like this, when you discover that something's wrong with the stream, you begin to work your way up gradient. And Bowling Green, as we always say, of course, Elizabethtown and a lot of the rest of you guys too are dealing with the same issues. You can work your way upstream so far, but ultimately all of these issues are going to sink back beneath the earth. That's exactly what happened here. This is a wellspring at the Trowgate Farm, which is where Jennings Creek emanates from. It's where it returns to the surface. And we discovered that the condition was present there. However, that's still not the source. We're still working our way upstream. We called multiple agencies, all hands on deck. WKU was helping us. The Bowling Green Municipal Utilities folks were helping us. The Kentucky Division of Water was helping us. But we quite literally just started to work our way up gradient. We know what direction that is from old dye traces. I know dye tracing was mentioned in an earlier presentation. As we're working our way upstream, we're just looking for those objectionable features of this particular discharge, in this case, odor. This is Journey Nixon. She's with the city of Bowling Green now on the engineering side, construction side, but she started over here with us and quite literally just, hey, do I smell anything? Do I see anything down the storm drain? Ultimately, it was the Kentucky Division of Water, Mr. Bruce Hatcher, that noticed some issues in some old aerial photography and felt like they were in the right area, the right location. He went out along with our geologist, Nick Lawhon, to investigate and found just behind a local facility that there were hundreds of thousands of gallons of essentially what appeared to the naked eye to be raw sewage. So as they're looking at that sort of stuff, trying to figure it all out, we're trying to figure out who to call, what to say, what exactly is going on. The big issue is this entire facility is locked up. All the gates are locked. There's no one in the guard shacks, no visitor signs posted. All of these things are kind of presented to us. We can look across into the facility and see that there are people moving around. However, we're not able to make immediate contact through the phone. No one knew anybody who might be on the inside of the facility. It's a situation where we have an immediate need. There's an exigency here that we need to get out all resources as fast as possible to begin to address the situation in the stream. The dissolved oxygen in the stream at this point is well below 1, and we're observing a fish kill in progress. So what do? Well, luckily for us, we're supported by our ordinance in these sorts of circumstances so that we can go ahead and make entry and do the kinds of things that we're expected to do to be protective of those downstream resources. So we go ahead and go in, make contact with the maintenance folks that we can see outside. They immediately get the management folks outside. But in this particular case, there was a way to walk around the fence. So we quite literally observed the folks that were on the inside, said, okay, these folks are wearing hard hats, safety shoes, safety glasses, and high vis. So we did our best to match their PPE requirements with what we had on hand, walked around the fences and just engaged those folks in a conversation, told them who we were, of course, very respectful. Hey, this is what we've discovered. This is on your property. This is going to have to be addressed. And in this particular circumstance, you can see from this photograph, timestamp, and then, of course, the slide before, within 8 hours, we started to get frac tanks delivered to the site, in order to collect all of this contaminated water so that it could not continue to discharge down into the cave system. There's not a expectation that these are the sorts of ordinances that you're going to use in the day-to-day running of this sort of a program. There's an expectation from folks on the construction side that, yes, there are inspectors who are going to arrive at our site, who are going to oversee our stuff. There's an expectation from industry that there are city and state resources that are constantly going to be coming by to check and make sure that you're in compliance with all of these sorts of things. So by and large, it's not something that we want to try to use often. However, I think it's an incredibly necessary thing to have when these sorts of things do rear their heads. In essence, what these ordinances do is support our staff to enter anywhere where we have probable cause or think that there could be some sort of a problem that's definitely a violation of the Clean Water Act and more specifically our ordinances. Refusal of that entry in any shape, form, or fashion. I advise our staff that if entry is refused, accept that. Make sure that that person's aware that we do have an ordinance support for an entry. However, if they continue to refuse, we're not going to get our staff into a situation where there's a threat of physical harm or some sort of extended liability that we can't see. So we will go ahead and retreat and make sure that we involve law enforcement and the legal department. However, our ordinance does support all the way up to reaching out to a local court and securing a warrant if we feel that there is an absolute exigent need for us to see, to test, to photograph, or to otherwise enter a property. As I mentioned, we're always looking to achieve voluntary cooperation first. I think pretty much everybody on this call would agree that working with someone to achieve compliance and get the things that need to be done is always preferable than any sort of an enforcement procedure. To speak to what Lucas was talking about just a minute ago, with regard to cooperation between municipal side folks and state folks, in this case, Bruce and I arrived at this together. We reached out to the local utility BGMU, and Tina, the pretreatment inspector, also arrived right away. And we were able to work together in this. And in this particular circumstance, because the city's a little bit smaller and a little bit more nimble, we're able to move more quickly to issue decisions more quickly than the state, where there's a few more levels of approval that those folks have to go to. So in order to make everything clear for this particular entity, the state sent them an email and said, so long as you're cooperative with the MS4's program and keep us informed, the MS4 is going to have the lead for this particular cleanup, this particular response. So in the background, they're working on permit requirements for DOW, but in the foreground, it's the City of Bowling Green staff who are in a day-to-day way overseeing this work, making sure that it all is completed. I'm not going to read through all of this stuff, but there's essentially two ordinances from our perspective that are supportive of this. The first is in our public infrastructure, rights-of-way, and stormwater, where we identify the sorts of mechanisms and the type of access that we need. And it's pretty comprehensive. We've used this multiple times, unfortunately. And in these circumstances, we've ensured the right for our folks to go in, take the photographs that they need, to take in instruments and take any measurements that they need to take, and as well to install long-term monitoring equipment to ensure continued compliance in particularly fraught situations. I don't know that the city's stormwater ordinance, infrastructure, and rights-of-way supports all of the internal investigation that may need to go along with ensuring that you've examined all possible routes for an illicit discharge that's working its way out into the environment. However, the city's local utility BGMU does. This is BGMU's ordinance, which BGMU and the City of Bowling Green staff are sister agencies supported by the same board. And so separate chapters, same book. These are BGMU's ordinances that support their right of entry inside the facilities. So we maintain a close working relationship with those folks. And when the need arises, BGMU will take the lead for an internal investigation and we accompany them. And in external investigations, BGMU accompanies us. The original last slide was just a photograph of myself, Dr. Polk, addressing a citizen group, a group of the neighbors that were at the stream side with our city mayor in the foreground looking on. And essentially the point that we were making there was that with regard to community support for these ordinances and generally how receptive our community has been, it's all been very positive. We are very reluctant to try to use these authorities and implement those. For the first 10 years or so that we had these ordinances, they weren't used at all. But from 2019 to 2023, we have had to exercise right of entry in order to complete an investigation in 3 separate illicit discharge instances, one with an underground storage tank release, another with an industrial discharge of surfactants, and then finally this more recent one with anaerobic wastewater discharge. So in our opinion, it's incredibly important to ensure that your investigators can fully complete an investigation and promptly initiate cleanups.